Hi, my name is Aurimas, and you are joining me for a session about risk management in product management. Now, there's a very common saying that you've probably heard, and I would like to take the saying and switch it up on you a little bit. I think in product management, if you're not planning to fail, then you're not a product manager. Yeah. So now, in addition to this, all of this presentation, to keep this lively and not Zoom-like, I can't prevent it altogether, but to keep it lively, I will be kind of breaking it up and just exposing product strategy with hair care products, a topic I know nothing about and a topic I am expert in. I'll let you be the judge which is which. All right, so anyways, let me get started. I want to tell you a story from an experience that we've had with our clients. And this is an actual product that is built and launched in the market right now. It is very like a Google Documents experience online, but it's different in that it allows financial services companies and other publicly traded businesses to file 8Ks and 10Qs with the government, with the SEC. So that's the US Securities and Exchange Commission. So for publicly traded companies to report their financial data to the government. It's an online product, again, allows people to collaborate in a Google Docs-like fashion and author these documents, add financial data to them, and so on and so forth. Complex product, right? And the build for this product started in the March of 2019. So we kind of did an original pilot version in a few months, validated some of the technical feasibility questions that we had to validate and prototype them out. And then we actually started building the content editor and the content publishing workflow. Did also the filing implementation in the beginning of 2020. So we were ready to file with the SEC. But again, it's a large enterprise grade software as a service product. And as we're building this product, as we're kind of preparing it for go-to-market towards the end of 2020, obviously, March 2020 happens. As all things in March 2020, coronavirus lockdowns shut down a lot of different facilities all over the world in mandatory lockdowns. And our client reaches out to us in March of 2020 and says, "Hey, can we talk for a second?" And when I give this gentleman a call, he tells me that, you know what, all of the people that were working for us, that were working from the office and actually filing these financial assets with the SEC, they can't get to their workstations because they're locked out. They can't physically enter the office. And then he said, well, since we built this new product as a software as a service, we should be able to launch it through or make it accessible through a VPN and actually allow our people to work inside of this product. Now, you realize that this is a go to production scenario, I tell him. And if we need to go to production, how soon do you want this to happen? Because our due date was till the end of the year. And he says, well, can you do it in a week? So, you know, what could possibly go wrong, right? I mean, it's a product that's been baked in progress, and we've been observing all of the best practices. But what if we weren't? And so we really were managing kind of a lot of different variables, a lot of different risks in this product to make sure that we prioritize features in the right way, that we made sure that, or kind of we had to look into pen testing, and we had to look at scalability requirements. We had to look at infrastructure and automation and infrastructure and the ability to deploy them quickly and so on and so forth. But we're able to actually successfully push the product out into a kind of friends and family release and get all of the employees into the system and working on these financial reports within a week. And we actually are able to file the first 8K for our clients within another week. So this was a great example of us kind of proactively preparing for, an unanticipated go-to-market scenario. And again, just following all of the best practices of product development. Now, my talk and what I want to focus on, right, is this is a scenario that could have gone south really, really quickly. It could have gone belly up if we weren't observing certain things, if we weren't looking out for certain risks. And so the claim to fame here, or the kind of the thesis of this particular talk, is that if you think that everything's fine, you simply don't know enough, right? You're not looking hard enough, and you're not looking around corners. We can cut this part out. Now, what I like to propose as a guideline of managing risk in product management is that you need to think about it as actively scanning for bogeys, right? Actively scanning for potential problems that could jump at you. It could be as I show that example, a rapid push to prod. It could be something where you need to pivot the product because you've discovered that it doesn't necessarily align with the original expectations that you had for it. And the problem, right, in product development is that when we start building products, especially when we're in a greenfield scenario of designing and building a new product, especially in the prototyping stages of building products, everything is smooth because we don't have a lot of kind of codependencies. It's smooth sailing for any new product that is being built in early stages. Now, the moment that a product matures, the moment that a product becomes complex, that's where things start going south. And that's why you really, really need to kind of keep this mindset of like this resilience to complacency anytime you do planning and anytime you actually assess risk as a product manager. Now, we do like to talk about assessing this risk in context of a full product development life cycle. So if I was to think about how a product is designed and built, from workshop to discovery to validation, prototyping, productization, and support, there's a build, measure, learn loop baked into that process, right? Any typical Scrum workflow, any product development workflow should have a build, measure, learn loop baked into it. And what I recommend and what we do at Devbridge is we always look at the ability to assess risks on planning days. So anytime we're planning the following sprint, anytime we're looking at the backlog, anytime we're doing prioritization, we are always looking at the assumptions that we made when we did roadmap planning for that particular epic or for that particular release. And we always scan for risks. We always look at things that potentially could derail the effort, that potentially could take us off the happy path for this product to go to market, for this product to actually achieve the goals that are set out for the business, right? So we do these risk scans. Let's talk about risk, right? We identify at Devbridge 3 types of risks or 3 types of bogeys that you need to scan for actively. And these risks are product viability. And that's really just thinking about, is the product going to achieve the product goals that it has, correct? Right? Is the business going to benefit from this product being built? There's a technical feasibility risk where you may be thinking about things such as, are you going to be able to technically execute this product, right? Is the technology mature enough? Are we accurately estimating the effort necessary to technically accomplish this, to actually ship the product? And then the last category is Evergreen Delivery, where you really need to think about all of the nuances of an effective lean product team. Is the velocity predictable? Is the team running with volatility, or is the team running in a very predictable fashion? Or what is our defect management strategy, right? So all of those things are related to delivery and managing delivery proactively. All right, so let's talk about product viability, the first category. There are kind of with product viability, right? There are many more risks, I suppose, that you could scan for, but in essence, you want to look at whether the product is creating value for business. That is one key thing. Usually, that is established through some type of measurable KPIs that you can actually track. And then, if you're able to track those things, obviously, you're able to indicate and show the business that it's succeeding. And if it's not succeeding, you can justify scrapping the product as well. But since I promised hair care products as the thesis of this talk, I'd like to bring your attention to the first example. I don't know if I have sound. Maybe I don't have sound. I probably don't have sound. I think this is the Flowbee. This is an actual product. You're able to give yourself a haircut. Flowbee was, I think this was advertised in early 90s, maybe late 80s. I'm thinking in context of all of these lockdowns, they were way ahead of the curve, right? I'm pretty sure this product maybe would have a better fit to market right now. But anyway, so just wanted to come back to the means of actually solving for some of the risks that we talked about, right? So the first risk is the ability to align the business around specific outcomes that a product can drive. And we have a set of tools that we can use to create that alignment. The first tool that we practice at Devbridge is called the service blueprint. And this talk is obviously too short to dive deep into how to execute a service blueprint, but the idea is to map out a customer experience on a horizontal, and that's, you can kind of look at those initial blue post-it notes as the customer experience. But then not only take the customer experience, but map the front end and the back end of the business, as well as all of the codependent systems in the business on the verticals. So you can kind of see the front end and the back end of the business as the orange and red squares, and the dependent systems as the blue squares. And in this type of service blueprint map, you should be able to identify the areas where a digital product would play a big role, areas where the product would be successful or create value for the business. In addition to a service blueprint, you really should look at a product canvas. And a product canvas, right, is a tool that you can use to align senior business stakeholders with the objectives that you've set out for this particular product. And if you do this correctly, if you map how the product fits into the service, and then you have a canvas that you can use to steer the product in the right direction, you should be set up in a good direction. This is just an example, right, of when we think about a discovery and definition engagement at Devbridge, we think about how do we use all of these capabilities and best practices to drive an accountable outcome from the prototyping activity. So, understanding the business model canvas, obviously running experiments and learning from frontline workers of whatever we're solving for, performing some type of technical feasibility to make sure that the technology is ready to solve the problems that we're looking to solve with this product. And then at the end, obviously, we need to look at the anticipated investment. So say the team comes back and says, listen, to get this product out to market, it's going to be $5 million. We need to look at the desired outcomes that this may drive and say, well, is it justifiable to invest $5 million in building this product and obviously getting it out to market? And usually when we run this type of exercise, we have a set of artifacts that we produce as a team where we can share this now with our business stakeholders and make sure that we're all aligned on the outcomes that the product is supposed to drive, the metrics and the outcomes that it's supposed to drive. One of the last things that I want to mention about product feasibility, right, or product feasibility risks. A lot of organizations are still running in a siloed fashion where business and IT and marketing and all other functions of the business are kind of siloed away. And there's dependencies on these different groups to take the product to market. But IT usually is doing the engineering, design is happening completely outside of this context. Business owns the budget and is also outside of this context. And so this type of organizational structure introduces a really, really big risk for product. It's actually a very anti-product approach, more of a waterfall kind of trickle-down model. And so this needs to be actively identified and managed. And ideally, you can get to an organizational structure which allows you to build teams to own the product and maybe even identify themes or epics that each individual team can own and work in a cross-functional manner, product-centric manner, where product is at the core of the organization. Now, again, this is a lot of where our kind of digital transformation services come into play when we work with our clients. But this is the ideal state that you want to get to with your product teams. Yeah. So to summarize, right? To summarize kind of what we talked about here in product feasibility, you want to make sure that you include senior stakeholders in the definition and the planning of the product, because that will help you align everyone's minds around what outcomes we're trying to drive. You need to have stakeholders or sponsors actively participating in demos so that they're actually able to take ownership of the software and kind of nudge it in the direction that it needs to go so that there's ongoing buy-in. And obviously you need a healthy organizational structure so that all of those supporting all of the supporting structures are in place for a cross-functional product team to thrive, to be able to take ownership, to drive their own roadmap, and to get the product out the door quickly. Last thing I'll say here is with product goals. So as you're thinking about the canvas, as you're the business canvas, as you're thinking about mapping out business outcomes based on product functionality, all the time try to drive specific, measurable, and achievable. So you cannot define a goal that is unachievable. Reach market dominance in 1 month, right? It's those things are just, they're so so out there that the product team is not going to be able to act or drive towards those goals. So they need to be specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be achievable. And this is an example of us tracking adoption on another product that we were building. We were essentially tracking active users within a healthcare application through time. And we were attempting a variety of different incentives to actually drive kind of an increase in velocity of adoption. And obviously, as you can kind of tell towards the end of the illustration, in the later part of the weeks, we figured out the right type of kind of triggers for doctors to start using this messaging application. And we could bring this report to the executive team at our clients and say, listen, we need additional $2 million for the funding of this product because we see positive trending in the business metrics that we've established to make this thing a success. The second set of risks that you need to be scanning for are the technical risks, right? And these are things like, the solution being cost prohibitive, meaning that the value it'll drive is less than the cost of building this thing because it's just so complex. Things like prerequisites. You want to make sure that, we have a lot of clients that come to us and say, hey, Devbridge, can you guys do machine learning on whatever, adoption or loan underwriting? And we say, sure, but have you collected the data necessary to build the models on? And they say, well, no, we haven't even started collecting the data. And so that's a good example of a prerequisite where without the prerequisite in place, you can't necessarily technically solve that problem. And then there's things that, technical decisions that could long-term impede the success of the product. Things like, building a monolithic architecture or building on top of monolithic architecture and later down the line running into an issue with scalability. So all of those things you need to look out for. There's another brilliant product from the 90s. It's called Great Looking Hair. It's an easy spray-on colored hair thickener that is truly mesmerizing to watch. Popular in the 90s. And apparently, I pulled the specs on this product. You could go swimming with it. Right. Anyway, so with technical feasibility, right, with risks associated with technical implementation, I always like to say, okay, let's start by understanding, is it affordable? Meaning that, is it justifiable to the business based on the estimates that we can get from the team? Then the second thing is the technology able to solve this problem? So this is, these are things like security. Maybe there's regulatory implications from a particular industry that you serve. Is the organization mature enough to actually adopt some of the practices that are necessary to build this? So, for example, is the organization ready to adopt data streaming? And then, obviously, are there prerequisites in place? And the last one is, do we have all of the kind of engineering maturity best practices in place to actively maintain and build this product, to actively develop this product without the product becoming legacy software? So all of these things need to be on the kind of top of mind for a product manager and for their engineering counterparts that work with the product leader. With risks, right? Risks need to be, how should I say this? An estimate is a tool for risk management. An estimate allows the business to commit to whatever that we're designing or building. And so we really need to look at kind of the way that we treat finances in context of technical product development. And the challenge with estimates, right, that everyone learns is that the larger the estimate, the lower the accuracy of said estimate. So you really need to be able to kind of take a product and then decouple or break it down so that it becomes digestible. And if you're able to decouple, to divide and conquer, you're then able to get more accurate in those kind of incremental funding stages of product development. We usually like to look at different types of products and how we de-risk them from a technical perspective. So for example, for a greenfield product, we would look at a release cadence, or not cadence, but a release forecast of 4 to 6 months with very, very clear outcomes, aligned group, prioritized backlog. If we're able to get that, right, if we're able to align a greenfield product around a go-to-market within 4 to 6 months, we use dual track Scrum with specific milestones to run this. And that's very, very effective. You estimate just for the forecast. You use dual track Scrum to do a little bit of forecasting along the way, build, measure, learn, ship it. If you aren't able to clearly align around a particular outcome for like 4 months, 5 months, you really should stop and reconsider how you want to do this. Maybe you need to do a discovery and definition exercise to break down the problem. Because if the product is larger than this, if you aren't able to do a release within 4 to 5 months, there's a problem with the way that you're decoupling that complexity. And long term, it's going to hurt you. Now, there's another type of product development that we run into all the time, and that's brownfield development, right? It's taking a legacy product and then building on top of a legacy product. And that is more complex because it includes technical discovery, it includes refactoring efforts, it includes actively tracking technical debt and then figuring out what technical debt is going to cost. So we like to kind of break it down, and we say, first, we need to make sure we understand how the current product executes. So do we have technical documentation? Do we have architecture? Do we have logic diagrams so that we could actually conceptually understand what business logic is baked into the product? And then on the flip side, we need to make sure, does the product currently work? Because the moment we start actually refactoring or adding new code into it, we may be breaking things. So for example, is our CI/CD pipeline working, right? Is automation set up? Is a testing strategy in place? Are we actively tracking defects and so on and so forth? Is the build process working? Can we actually build the solution that exists and release an updated version of it to market? All of those things, all of these kind of exercises are what we do to drive clarity and to de-risk technical analysis of product development. With brownfield, we kind of limit it again. We limit it on spend because we think that it's more about risk management and spend, not necessarily time frame. And if you cannot, or if the scope is less than $500,000, if the scope is relatively finite and defined, it's just a minor fix, you can do a bottom-up estimate and use Scrum delivery to build it. If it's larger than $500,000, if it includes larger kind of refactoring efforts, we look at discovery and definition as an exercise, and then we make a decision. Can we own the product scope? Can Devbridge actually own the product and take it to market with what we know about it? If we can't, we need to go time and materials, dual track Scrum, and just kind of re-workshop every few sprints. If we can own it, and if we understand the scope clearly, we can do a bottom-up estimate up to $1 million and use Scrum to ship it. And then that risk will be lower. Also with technical risks, consider looking at things like conceptual diagrams, right? Look at physical diagrams, try to understand how the architecture of the existing systems work. Look at the kind of engineering maturity of the product. Are a lot of these different sub-practices of software development being observed? And I understand some of this stuff may be deeper technical than a typical product manager would handle, but some of the best product managers that I've ever worked with at Devbridge and with our clients are product managers that can get a little bit deeper on technology, because we are in the technology field, and that skill set is absolutely beneficial, drives a lot of value, right? All right, so let's talk about the last category, right? So the last category that we mentioned was Evergreen Delivery. And this is really about making sure that the team can consistently execute over time. so that the successes in prototyping live on to actually delivering a mature kind of industrial grade product, like a software as a service to market, make it maintainable and so on. I don't know why this gentleman is using a cat to fluff the other gentleman's hair, but I assume it's a thing. Maybe. It looks fun. I'd like it. I mean, even, I wonder if I could get like a head massage from that cat. The thing with delivery is that there is no stable state, right? So the stable state does not exist in product. And then this relates very much to, again, managing risk in product development. In that anytime you're building anything, you should be actively tracking product debt and technical debt. And the reason why you should track both is because you are always making compromises across both accounts. You're making technical debt compromises because you are trying to get this thing out to market in a reasonable time. And you're making product debt decisions because you can't functionally get all of the needs of all of the business stakeholders in the product at any given point in time. My recommendation for you, if you want to actively track risks and have effective tools to use with your business counterparts, especially when you need to talk about funding, is consider tracking product debt and technical debt, and also estimating both product and technical debt. And even beyond that, track the growth rate of both of these backlogs, because these metrics will indicate a lot of interesting nuances around the health of how you are managing your backlog. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail around what technical debt is and why you should take care of it, but all I want to make sure you take away from this is that you should actively track how effectively you're able to resolve debt. If you are tracking debt, estimating debt, and you're resolving it on an ongoing basis, whereas your backlog is not constantly blowing up, you're good. If you're resolving technical debt, but it continues to creep, this is going to lead to a problem long term, right? You're going to find yourself in a scenario where technical debt will overwhelm your ability to ship new features to market. And I'll talk about that in a second. You should be actively, in context of delivery, you should be actively tracking defect metrics, escape defects versus resolved defects. So, how are we able to, how quickly are we able to resolve defects when they escape? Internal defects, right? Make sure that when you're using Jira and when you're tracking the backlog, make sure that you are capturing defects as Jira tickets, so that over time you could look at the volatility of your defect generation. Because a lot of these things may be indicative of the testing strategy that you're running for the product team. Because if you are generating a lot of defects, then you probably need to invest in some type of automation, whether it's unit tests or end-to-end testing or UI tests, whatever, right? But the idea is that, like, for example, in this graph, we're showing positive trending in the ability to eliminate defects over time. So not only are we capturing less defects, but we're also resolving them in time. Jared Leto is amazing. Do you see how many different hairstyles he had there? So jealous. Not really. But a few other things, right? We also, when we work at Devbridge, in our cross-functional product teams, we track all of our time. So we track time across the different rituals, but we also track time across types of investment. So, for example, we track testing separately from code reviews, separately from technical design, separate, and so on and so forth. And why this is important is that we can look at cost of a particular sub-discipline over time. And for example, if we see that there's an unnatural spike in code reviews or in technical design, there may be friction or issues that we are experiencing in that particular ritual, and we need to dive deep into that ritual and do some resolution. Velocity, volatility over time. I don't have to explain why that's important and why you shouldn't have a volatile velocity. Stories completed over time, right? So this is like a rolling average of velocity. That is also really, really important because it gives predictability to the business and how you're able to address the needs that are surfacing for the product. Delta of feature origination and go to market. So how long does it take you to take a feature to market after it's been identified as necessary for the business? If you have a healthy backlog, if you have healthy product debt, if you have healthy technical debt, you should be able to prioritize and get a feature out in a matter of a sprint or 2 sprints. Whatever the metric is, tracking it and understanding it will make you much, much better at assessing the risk of delivery. So hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully you get an idea of how to manage risk around product viability, around building strong, technically strong, industrial grade products, and then also establishing kind of scalability and predictability in your product delivery ritual. So all of those things, the nuanced relationships in a cross-functional product team. If you scan for these 3 risks, constantly look at the perimeter for these risks, you should be doing well. By the way, if you want to learn more, I've written a book about all of this. It's called The Secret Source. You can take a look at it at thesorceryacademy.com or check us out on Devbridge.com. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was entertaining as well as informative, and I hope you have a wonderful hair day. Thank you. Bye.